So some key points about moles questions. The balanced equation, the balanced equation tells you what you would get in terms of ratio. Hang on, let me just. So, e.g., what's happened there? E.g., the equation below says if I had two, well, we can just copy what we did before actually. So that's an example of it in action here. But the thing is, what you've got to realize is that if I had that, now we don't actually know at this point how many moles we do have. Okay, so it's not. So this is only saying if I had. This is the balanced equation is simply saying, and because obviously the balanced equation is there all the time, doesn't matter how many grams you get given. The balanced equation simply describes what would happen if you had 2 moles of that. So that's a really important key point that so many people struggle with. They get all confused, and then they start multiplying. Well, basically, that's the first thing to take into account. Whoops. So the next mass of 1 mole and can be worked out by looking at the chemical formula, not the equation above. So what I mean by that is we're not talking about mathematical formulas here. We're not talking about the mass is equal to moles times molar mass or anything like that. We're just talking about the chemical formula and the chemical equation. The chemical equation is this thing I've got written in red up here, and the chemical formula might be something like FeCl3. That's a chemical formula. Now, chemical formulas do not have big numbers in them. They just have little numbers. They're simply describing what that substance is made out of, how many atoms are in the molecule, and so on. As I said, it gets a bit confusing when you talk about ionic substances because they don't actually form molecules, but the principle is the same. So what do we do? How do we actually work this out? Well, so we worked out by looking at the chemical formula. And also we would have to look at the periodic table. So let me just unlock that. So looking at chemical formula, not the equation above, and the periodic table. So we need to look at the periodic table as well. Right. So in other words, the molar mass of, let me just make my pen a bit thicker. The molar mass of FeCl3 is going to be, because if you look at the iron on the periodic table, it is 56 plus, then 3 times, don't know why my pen's being weird lately, 35.5. So that's how you would work that out, which we did in the question. So I can see just about make out that that's 162.5. So that is the mass of 1 mole. Okay. Now it might be worth also saying at this point that this is also called the relative formula mass, or depending on whether it's a formula or just an atom. If it's just an atom, you would call it the relative atomic mass, right? Or relative atomic mass. Okay. Right. So it's better to think about it as the mass is equal to the number of moles times the molar mass, rather than thinking about it in terms of relative atomic mass and so on, because then it makes a bit more sense. Okay. Now the next thing to well, I think those are the kind of the key things at this point, I suppose. There's probably a couple of things we could say.